Greetings. In this video we are going to talk about fetching different types of data from the console in Python. Python is a popular programming language for a wide range of applications, including data science, machine learning, as well as web development. The ability to connect with users via the console is a vital feature of any programming language. This video will go over how to get numerous types of data from the console in Python, such as text, integers, and floats. I will also showcase how we can derive other data types from a fetched string input. I assume you know how to do typecasting. If you don't, see my typecasting video. Programs need to be receptive to user input and thus operate within the user's environment. Rarely do programmers know all the values a user might need to use in a program. So the program needs to be flexible and operate with the user's data and not programmer's data. I must also stress that for practice purposes, we are using the terminal or console as the user interface. But there are many interfaces which can be used to interact with the programs, including GUI, and Python can build such interfaces. We shall look at how to use the input function to fetch data from the console. By default, the input function fetches a string from the console. It can display a prompt or a message if such is provided in the parentheses. Let's look at how we fetch a string. The input function fetches a string and a string only, and it returns the string. Therefore, we need a variable in which we can store the string and use it for any other purposes in our program. If we don't need to store the returned value, we can always print the returned string. But in our case, we are fetching a string from the user and we are assigning it to a variable and we are using it to display a hello with a name. Now, as you can see here, there is nothing, but we shall talk about what can be put there later. Let's run our program. Now, you can see here it's just a blank console. Nothing is displayed. The program is not telling the user what to do. Okay, we'll address that later. For now, let's type our name. After typing your name, you press enter. You see hello dev. Now, imagine after this program runs, all the user sees is just a blank console or terminal. They don't know what to do. This is not a good practice, as the program may need to receive input from the user. This raises the need for prompting the user to use the inbuilt printing feature of the input function. How do we do that? I'm commenting this so that this doesn't request input again. Now, we are passing a prompt to the input function. So when this is run, the input function is going to display this prompt. This prompt should be a single value. So if you have multiple values, you need to join or concatenate them using formatting tools into a single value. Now let's run and see. Now you can see the prompt, enter your name, which means the user knows what the program is expecting him or her to do. Dev and enter. Hello, dev. So this is a better way, since the user is informed of what the program is expecting from the user. Now, enough about these strings. Let's talk about how we fetch an integer. I'm commenting the previous code out so that I don't receive prompts which may delay us. The input function cannot fetch an integer. To fetch an integer using the input function is not possible. We have to fetch a string number. Then we cast it explicitly to an integer using the int function. To demonstrate this, we shall use an age calculator. For this example, we shall fetch the user's year of birth, Now, as we said, this year of birth is going to be assigned a string which is fetched from the console because the input function returns a string. Let's see the type. Now, to convert this to an integer, we need to use integer casting. We are reusing the same variable name year of birth because we don't want to use it for any other purposes as a string. So we are overwriting the variable. Now, because this is now an integer, we can fetch the current year to use for age calculation. But our current year, we need to just do a shortcut where we use function nesting. Here we are saying the value for the current year entered by the user is returned by the input function as a string, and we just cast it to an integer, then we store that in current year, which is another way. Instead of doing what we did here, first fetching the string, then casting it later, you can just fetch and cast immediately. Now, because both are now integers or numbers, we can calculate the year of birth. Let's run our program and see what's going to happen. In the year of birth, 2000, you can see that this is the output for line 12. It's now a class, but after converting, it becomes an integer. Now it's requesting for the current year, 2023. Then we receive a message, you are 23 years old. So this is what we expect from the program. Now we want to look at how we fetch a float. As with the integers, you cannot fetch a float from the console using the input function, but you need to first fetch the string float value, but then you convert it to a float using the float function. Now, when you are casting to an int or a float, if a user puts a value that cannot be casted into such, an error is generated. For example, when the program requests for a year of birth, then you enter a 2000 in words, then the program will raise an error because it cannot convert those words to an integer. Now we are going to redo our temperature converter program, but this time we want to use user-defined Fahrenheit temperature values. Now, because temperature can be a decimal, we have to use the float object type as it is the most suitable. How do we convert our temperature from Fahrenheit to degrees? The algorithm is that you subtract 32 from the temperature Fahrenheit, then you multiply by 5/9. So that is our multiplier. Temp Fahrenheit. It has to be a float. Now we're calculating our Celsius temperature. We have to subtract a 32 first, then we multiply by our multiplier. So we have to put this in brackets for the purpose of order of operation, so that subtraction happens before multiplication. Now let's run our program and see it at work. Enter the temperature, Fahrenheit temperature. I'm going to enter 120 and I'm getting the 48.88 degrees, which is what we expect from our program. Okay, enough about this. How do we fetch more than one value? By the way, if you have enjoyed this video this far, I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also ring the notification bell so that you can get notified when we release a new video. You can also ask any questions you have any. Remember to comment, remember to like and share. Now we want to fetch more than one value, but sometimes we expect get a list from a user. In Python, we can fetch more than one value, but this happens when you fetch the value as a string. Then you separate the strings into substrings by a separator. So I'm going to show you how we separate using a space. Then we get a list. So here we want to request name of animals from the user, and the user should separate by a space. For you to see the input type, I'm going to the type function on our animals variable. Now, if I'm going to print animals here, you're going to see also its value. So I want you to see the type of these animals which we fetched from the user. So we are going to run it later, then you are going to see that. Now we want to convert the animal string into a list. We have to use the string method split. So our string variable. Now the split expects to be given the separator. That is the value used to separate our substrings on the input. In our case, the separator is a space, so we just leave it like that. Now I'm going to comment out this part. Okay, let's run our program and see what's going to happen. Enter names of animals separated by space. I'm going to enter a donkey, space, cat, space, chicken, duck, space, pig. Enter. Now you can see that this is the input that we entered with the spaces in between wherever you put a space, and the class is a string. Now after the split, this is what you see, which means now, okay, I didn't put type here. Now you can see after the split, it is now a list. And this is what we get, a list with our substrings, donkey as an element, cat as an element, chicken, duck, because there's no space between, it's taken as one element, and our pig. So that is how we can derive a list from the user. Now, what about separated by another separator? What if you want to separate by hash? Maybe you can use your own separator if you want. You can use a hash. But this time for our hash, we want to return a set. Now, this will be a set of numbers. So the user should type numbers and separate them by a hash. Now the nums dot split returns a list. We have seen that, but we want a set, so we have to cast the returned value of the nums dot split, but we are splitting by a hash. So we have to put our hash in quotes because it is a string value. So we are saying the values that the user entered are being split here using our split method of the nums string. And what is returned is a list, but that list is being casted to a set. So that is what is happening there. Now let's print our set. Now if we run this program and we put our values 1 hash 2 hash 3 hash 4, you can see that this is the values that we entered separated by hashes, type string, but this is the set of individual string numbers. You should also see that because it's a set, elements don't have a permanent position. We entered them in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, but we're getting 4, 1, 3, 2. So that is what you have to observe. But you can see that these are still strings in a set, because when we split, we don't change the data type of the substrings. They remain strings. If you want to change these individual elements into numbers or integers, you need to do so, but that is beyond the scope of this video. If you want to fetch a dictionary, you still have to fetch the key values. If you want to fetch a tuple, you still need to cast the result of the split method of your string into a tuple. So this is how we fetch our values from the console. We have now covered the principles of retrieving various forms of data, such as text, integers, and floats from the terminal in Python. And we have also covered how we derive or how we fetch list tuples among other data types from the console. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. Remember to comment, like, and share so that you can get notified when I release a new video. Stay well until we meet again.